To day 22 of A Course in Miracles. Today we continue reading chapter 3, The Innocent Perception, part 6, Judgment and the Authority Problem. We have already discussed the last judgment, but in insufficient detail. After the last judgment, there will be no more. Judgment is symbolic because beyond perception, there is no judgment. When the Bible says, "Judge not that ye be not judged," it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. The choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. So we're choosing between judgment and knowing. And when we choose to judge, then we know that's why we have lost our peace, because we've chosen to judge rather than to know. Judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge, rests. Perception rests on the process of judgment. I have discussed this before in terms of the selectivity of perception, pointing out that evaluation is its obvious prerequisite. We evaluate before we judge things. Judgment always involves rejection. It never emphasizes only the positive aspects of what is judged, whether in you or in others. What has been perceived and rejected, or judged and found wanting, remains in your mind because it has been perceived. One of the illusions from which you suffer is the belief that what you judged against has no effect. This cannot be true unless you also believe that what you judged against does not exist. You evidently do not believe this, or you would not have judged against it. In the end, it does not matter whether your judgment is right or wrong. Either way, you are placing your belief in the unreal. This cannot be avoided in any type of judgment because it implies the belief that reality is yours to select from. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. Tremendous release and deep peace will come when we just quit judging ourselves and others. When you recognize what you are and what your brothers are, you will realize that judging them in any way is without meaning. In fact, their meaning is lost to you precisely because you are judging them. All uncertainty comes from the belief that you are under the coercion of judgment. You do not need judgment to organize your life, and you certainly do not need it to organize yourself. In the presence of knowledge, all judgment is automatically suspended. And this is the process that enables recognition to replace perception. In the presence of knowledge, all judgment is automatically suspended. And this is the process that enables recognition to replace perception. You are very fearful of everything you have perceived but have refused to accept. You believe that because you have refused to accept it, you have lost control over it. This is why you see it in nightmares or in pleasant disguises in what seem to be your happier dreams. Nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness. It is not dangerous in itself, but you have made it seem dangerous to you. When you feel tired, it is because you have judged yourself as capable of being tired. Okay. When you laugh at someone, it is because you have judged him as unworthy. When you laugh at yourself, you must laugh at others, if only because you cannot tolerate the idea of being more unworthy than they are. All this makes you feel tired because it is essentially disheartening. You are not really capable of being tired, but you are very capable of wearying yourself. The strain of constant judgment is virtually intolerable. So I wonder if that's why sometimes I just feel so tired. I'm just tired of all these judgments, constant judgments. I'm not going to judge that as being unprofessional. Getting a text message and not having put my phone on silent. I'm not going to judge it. I hope you don't either. It would just make us tired. Let's just give it a break. It is curious that an ability so debilitating, judgment, would be so deeply cherished. Yet if you wish to be the author of reality, you will insist on holding on to judgment. Okay, so time to give up our pens of life, trying to be the author of our reality and holding on to our judgment. Okay, what next? Jesus. You will also regard judgment with fear, believing that it will someday be used against you. This belief can exist only to the extent that you believe in the efficacy of judgment as a weapon of defense for your own authority. Okay, this belief can exist only to the extent that you believe in the efficacy of judgment as a weapon of defense for your own authority. So a lot of words in that sentence. And I think in basic translation, I reckon that it means we can only believe that the judgment will be used against us to the extent that we believe that our judgment is a weapon of defense for our own authority. We use judgment as a way of having authority in our lives. It's like a weapon of defense. Interesting. And then we worry that it's going to be one day used against us. The same weapon that we use to defend our authority may one day be used against us, and that scares us. God offers only mercy. Your words should reflect only mercy, because that is what you have received, and that is what you should give. That's strong language here. I've heard many times to avoid using the word should, but that is the choice of words used right here. It's not you could. Your words could reflect only mercy. It's your words should reflect only mercy, because that is what you have received, and that is what you should give. Okay. There's an instruction for you, for us. Our words should only reflect mercy, because that is what we have received. Therefore, that is what we should give. God offers only mercy. Justice is a temporary expedient or an attempt to teach you the meaning of mercy. It is judgmental only because you are capable of injustice. So, justice is only an attempt to teach us the meaning of mercy, and justice is judgmental only because we are capable of injustice. I've spoken of different symptoms, and at that level there is almost endless variation. There is, however, only one cause for all of them: the authority problem. This is the root of all evil. The authority problem. It doesn't say money here. It says the authority problem is the root of all evil. What is that? Let's find out. Every symptom the ego makes involves a contradiction in terms, because the mind is split between the ego and the Holy Spirit. so that whatever the ego makes is incomplete and contradictory. This untenable position is the result of the authority problem, which, because it accepts the one inconceivable thought as its premise, can produce only ideas that are inconceivable. Okay, what is this one inconceivable thought as the ego's premise? Is it the separation that Jesus has been talking about? The issue of authority is really a question of authorship. When you have an authority problem, it is always because you believe you are the author of yourself and project your delusion onto others. You then perceive the situation as one in which others are literally fighting you for your authorship. This is the fundamental error of all those who believe they have usurped the power of God. Or in other words, we believe we've been able to take God off the throne and taken that power ourselves. This is a fundamental error. We think that we are fighting for our authorship. Authority, authorship. This belief is very frightening to them, but hardly troubles God. He is, however, eager to undo it, not to punish his children, but only because he knows that it makes them unhappy. It makes us unhappy when we are taking authorship of something that is not ours to take authorship of or to have authority over. God's creations are given their true authorship, capital A, authorship, but you prefer to be anonymous when you choose to separate yourself from your author. Interesting. I love this poetic kind of language here. Like God's already written us and written our lives, perhaps. And here we are trying to write it all ourselves, or write and take the ownership of ourselves as if we created ourselves. Being uncertain of your true authorship, you believe that your creation was anonymous. This leaves you in a position where it sounds meaningful to believe that you created yourself. The dispute over authorship has left such uncertainty in your mind that it may even doubt whether you really exist at all. Only those who give over all desire to reject can know that their own rejection is impossible. You have not usurped the power of God, but you have lost it. We've lost the power of God. Goodness, please help us get it back. Fortunately, to lose something does not mean that it has gone. It merely means that you do not remember where it is. We've forgotten. Its existence does not depend on your ability to identify it or even to place it. Okay, so the fact that we have lost the power of God doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter if we identify it or not even. And we don't even have to place, we don't have to locate it. We don't have to find where it is. Where is the power of God? It just means we've forgotten. We've forgotten where it is. It is possible to look on reality without judgment and merely know that it is there. Reality is there without us having to judge it. Peace is a natural heritage of spirit. I love the repetition about peace. How we need to be reminded that peace is a natural heritage of spirit. And just the other day, the text finished with, spirit is in a state of peace forever. Spirit is who you really are, something like that. Peace is your reality. And it says again, peace is a natural heritage of spirit. Everyone is free to refuse to accept his inheritance. We're free to refuse the acceptance of our inheritance. We don't have to accept it, but he is not free to establish what his inheritance is. The problem everyone must decide is the fundamental question of authorship. All fear comes ultimately, and sometimes by way of very devious routes, from the denial of authorship. The offense is never to God, but only to those who deny him. To deny his authorship is to deny yourself the reason for your peace, so that you see yourself only in segments. This strange perception is the authority problem. To deny his authorship is to deny yourself the reason for your peace, so that you see yourself only in segments, not as a whole. This strange perception is the authority problem. There is no one who does not feel that he is imprisoned in some way. If this is the result of his own free will, he must regard his will as not free, or the circular reasoning in this position would be quite apparent. Free will must lead to freedom. Judgment always imprisons because it separates segments of reality by the unstable scales of desire. The unstable scales of desire. Okay. Judgment always imprisons because it separates segments of reality by the unstable scales of desire. Wishes are not facts. To wish is to imply that willing is not sufficient. Yet no one in his right mind believes that what is wished is as real as what is willed. Instead of seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, say, will ye first the kingdom of heaven? And you have said, I know what I am, and I accept my own inheritance. Lots of gold nuggets in that text. If you do have the book, there may be some things you want to highlight or take notes down in a journal. I mean, you can't debate the truth in the statement that free will must lead to freedom. Yet we realize that in our own state of apparent free will, we are still feeling imprisoned because the judgment is there. Okay, lesson 22. What I see is a form of vengeance. Today's idea accurately describes the way anyone who holds attack thoughts in his mind must see the world. Having projected his anger onto the world, he sees vengeance about to strike at him. His own attack is thus perceived as self-defense. This becomes an increasingly vicious circle until he is willing to change how he sees. Otherwise, thoughts of attack and counterattack will preoccupy him and people his entire world. What peace of mind is possible to him then? It is from this savage fantasy that you want to escape. It is not joyous news to hear. Is it not joyous news to hear that it is not real? It is not a happy, is it not a happy discovery to find that you can escape? You made what you would destroy, everything that you hate and would attack and kill. All that you fear does not exist. Look at the world about you at least 5 times today, for at least a minute each time. As your eyes move slowly from one object to another, from one body to another, say to yourself, I see only the perishable. I see nothing that will last. What I see is not real. What I see is a form of vengeance. At the end of each practice period, ask yourself, is this the world I really want to see? The answer is surely obvious. 5 times, 1 minute each time. That's lesson 22. What I see is a form of vengeance. And it's on page 33 of your workbook. Keep up with these lessons. We're really starting to get into the nitty-gritty of things. Yeah, I do encourage you to persist and persevere and try your best to make the 5 practice periods per day as suggested and requested here in the lesson. What I see is a form of vengeance. May you be blessed. I'll see you soon. Ciao.